Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this month's CPD Standards webinar. Just going to keep saying hello to you all as you're all coming in this morning. It's a great pleasure to see you all and a great pleasure to be running our monthly webinar. So as everyone comes in, we're just saying good morning and welcome. I know that we've got lots of people dialing in on different time zones from different locations. So it's wonderful to see you all here. Although obviously for us here in the UK, it is possibly a little bit rainier than where some of you are. So this morning's webinar is on neurodiversity, mental resilience and leadership. And of course, there's never been a more important topic than there is at the moment in terms of discussing this area. So we're delighted to have one of our members join us, Simon Nichols, today to talk this through. So our time today, as normal, it's as you know, for those of you that join us regularly, we have a 50-minute webinar session with Q&A. Please use the chat first of all to introduce yourselves, let us know where you're dialing in from, but also use the chat to make observations, to ask some questions, and just to put in any thoughts that are springing to mind. And then what we will do at the end of the session is then start to answer those with Simon directly. If you've got any questions around your assessment, your membership, or anything to do with renewals, then do direct message Kirsty, our wonderful colleague on the webinar here, with direct queries. But let's keep the chat really free for Simon and making sure that that it's CPD for ourselves, because that is what is today is all about. So our guest speaker today is Simon, looking after Thrive. And as I said, a wealth of knowledge on neurodiversity, and it's a huge welcome to you today, Simon, and for your time. We really appreciate it. So I'm going to hand over to you now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hopefully the technology will work. And hopefully Simon will be able to join. I find it amazing that even though we've used Zoom for so long, we still struggle at times to have everybody in and share screen. Simon, are you okay to upload your slides?
Yes, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
gonna I was just gonna have a quick chat before uploading the slides
sure,
because sometimes
sure,
it's nice to not have to look at a blue screen in the background.
of
So
course.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Amanda, and I'm so pleased to be here today. And it's I love delivering these webinars that are global. I've done a few now, and I always like to find out who the furthest away from Milton Keynes is. So if you could just, I mean, we are global, so let's just put the country. Let's see the furthest away from the UK we have today. Just to, and by the way, you will win a virtual Mars bar. That is virtual, so it doesn't actually exist. But if you don't have Mars bars in the in your location, think of it as a sort of caramelly, chocolatey treat. Richard is already zooming ahead there straight away with Johannesburg. There's going to be some string coming out on the atlases a little bit later because we've also got a Nigeria. Welcome. I'd love to get your name right, Chioma. If I haven't, please do let me know. We've got some more Nigerians coming in as well. Raphael, wonderful to have you on board as well. So yeah, really excited to be here personally, but hopefully it's going to be worthwhile for you guys as well. See, yeah, Amanda, I'm afraid it doesn't. You don't cut it really. It's a Nigeria is definitely beating Staines. We've got an Edinburgh. Do you know what, Heather? In other webinars, Scotland would probably win, but we do have a South Africa and Nigeria on board. So I'm going to leave it up to our wonderful African colleagues to tell me which is the furthest. I've got a feeling it might be Johannesburg. Right. Well, thank you all again. And we will be using the chat quite a bit today. I like to make these webinars interactive. And as we go through, I will be introducing a little bit about myself and also why it's been such an honor to be here today with you as well. So as Amanda has already very kindly shared. Um, my name's Simon Nichols, and I'm going to be talking to you today about neurodiversity, and probably for a lot of you, that's going to be a new term, the actual term neurodiversity, not necessarily a new term in having heard it, but you might be surprised to find out what it actually means, because we do get a lot of confusion, especially when I start to talk about neurodiversity, neurodiverse, neurodiversion, neuroinclusion, neuroacceptance, and a whole host of other language that we're going to be talking about today. But first, I'd like to take you on a bit of a journey. And I started my journey into where I am today in terms of a mental health and neurodiversity. Let's call me an advocate. I do keynotes, I talk around the world on the importance of looking after yourself. But my journey for today started many years ago when I got my first job. My first job was in IT. Well, actually, that's a lie. My first job was putting cold, what they call frozen turkeys into a supermarket aisle. But that was quite a long while ago. I guess my career in IT was what has driven me here today. I was very lucky to travel the world, be a senior VP, and spend a lot of time talking about sales and marketing. And what that did was that gave me a rich tapestry of grounding in culture and in how to run business and how to support global organizations. But my real journey to being here today and talking to you today started in 2016. And that was the year that I got married for the second time. And it was also the year that we unfortunately went through a few life events, my wife and myself and my family. What I was very fortunate enough to do in 2023 was do a TEDx talk, and a lot of the information I'm very glossing over that happened to me in 2016, you can find out about in that TEDx. So if you are interested in listening, you've got 22 minutes of time. There is, if you go onto YouTube and you type in "Big Boys Do Cry," I will try and put the actual link in a little bit later, but "Big Boys Do Cry," you'll find me in a horrible checkered shirt. I really wish I'd done a little bit more research on my checkered shirt. However, a lot of the information that I've deliberately glossed over, you'll find in that TEDx last year. So what did happen to me in late 2016 was I was off work with depression. It was the first time that I experienced depression. Hello, Carol from sunny Lagos. And it was the first time that it came into my sphere of experience. I was off for 3 months. I came back into, I guess, corporate society in early 2017. Phased return to work, very supported by the organisation that I was working with. Also, I felt at the time there were definitely individuals that were supportive. Fast forward to the end of 2017, and I was informed that I was going to be made redundant. And thank you, someone's put the link up. That is wonderful, Melanie. You are amazing. And I was told I was going to be made redundant in the April of 2018. Now, for me and my journey, that wasn't the first redundancy. When you're in a senior exec position, you sometimes get laid off. You sometimes get asked to move on, and that's what happened to me. So as I exited out of April, and I worked right up to the last day, I was super diligent. I did everything right, did everything I possibly could. Then just as I was about to leave, as I was exiting the building, so to speak, I was told by one of my friends in the very senior in the HR team that there was a note on my personnel file that said burnt out, no use to anyone, do not consider for re-employment or promotion. And this had badgered me a little bit as I was going through that transition, because I was trying to get another job, another less powerful, less sales orientated role. And I was turned away at every corner. And this actually now made sense to me as to why I wasn't able to get re-employed. And like all senior execs, we're given a little bit of money, not much. We're given a little bit of money not to say anything and to move away. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't want to bring any tribunals. I didn't want to bring anything up. So I moved on and I started my own consultancy, doing C-level advisory. And a lot of what I'd learned over those previous 25, 26 years was brought to bear, sort of looking out and supporting other individuals in that business space. In November 2018, I attended a mental health first aid course. So if there's those of you on the course that are not familiar with mental health first aid, there's a company in the UK called MHFA England. It's actually a worldwide conglomerate, which is MHFA International. And I did a mental health first aid course, 2 days. And what that actually did for me was give me this opportunity, this experience of thinking about my mental health for the first time. And I came out of that course, and I'd done it with my wife, who'd been through me through 2016, 2017, and now into 2018, supporting me all the way, getting me through my depression, getting me back into where I felt I was today. And I turned to her and I said, this is what I need to do. I need to take my learning in the exec space, in the corporate space, and I need to do this. I need to take this back into that arena. And selfishly, I wanted to help one person. And that one person was me. I wanted to travel back in time. I know that's not possible, to 2015 to tell me all these coping strategies, these coping mechanisms that I'd developed over that time. And as a net result of all of that, I trained to become a mental health first aid instructor in 2019. And then, with impeccable timing, I started Thrive in 2020 in January, with 6 months of face-to-face training ahead of me. And then, bang, we had a global pandemic. That sort of put the brakes on a little bit on my plan for educating as many people as possible. But I took that mantra with me, helping one person. And that's what Thrive does today. We help one person at a time. Yes, we could help many. Yes, we could help the world. But actually, if we just take it one person at a time, we just help support one person at a time, you'll see how incredible life can actually be for that individual. 2021, we started to look at what we felt would be the next emerging market. The overlap had always been there between neurodiverse differences and mental ill health. And we were quite often asked in our courses about autistic spectrum disorder, ADHD. And I had a few answers because I did a little bit of research, but I didn't have all the answers. So again, in 2021, we started to put together, which is what we have today, which is Neurodiversity in the Workplace training that we do incredible work with the CPD Standards Office, which is why I'm here today. And we're super proud to be part of this family. But that's me. We are here now, 2024. We've trained 45 instructors globally. We've got instructors coming on from the Philippines. We've got Australia, the US. So what we don't have actually, and it's great that we've got quite a few of our African individuals on the call, is we don't yet have any neurodiversity trainers in Africa. So if that's something that you feel passionate about, please get in touch with me afterwards. But what are we here today to talk about? Because that's enough about me. That's just a little bit of an overview. We're here to talk about us as leaders. And leaders don't need to definitely be defined by someone who is at the forefront or the head of a company. I think some of the best leaders I've ever met have been, I guess, in roles that they wouldn't consider themselves to be leaders. Leaders allow other people the space, the freedom. Leaders allow us to follow. And as leaders or individuals that other people would like to follow, we can sometimes see we know where we're going, don't we? We're leading, we're out in front. We can sometimes see the whole of the picture. But sometimes we don't really know what path is the best one to take. And I'd like you in the chat, please, when you see this image, what does it convey to you? What does it conjure up? Let's think of this as your life, as your journey. You've got to this point, you can see this view. What does that mean to you? What is this image? That's the whole question. It's a very personal image. In terms of leadership, what does this image mean to you? Check it in the chat. Wow, that's a wonderful. Finally, can see the hope. I've got to the top of that hill. Freedom and peace, safe to explore. Oh, brilliant, Richard. All rivers meet at the lake. Yeah, we've got this whole combination, calm, solitude. We're moving forwards. Many paths leading to a point, a journey with endless opportunities. I am loving you guys. Serenity, tranquility. I'm at the top of a mountain. Take a break and think, leading to a place of peace and calm. Oh, this is incredible. A road to a better future. If I'm in a bad mood, then I will. Yeah, exactly. What's incredible about a lot of the options, thank you, Katie. What's incredible about a lot of those comments there, and please feel free to go back, and they come in very thick and fast, is none of you went, oh, it was a bit hard, it was a bit tough. You know, we're at the top of a mountain here. We don't know whether we've come from the mountain in Mordor in the far distance, or actually if we turn around, there's even bigger mountains behind us. We don't know where we are necessarily, yet at the same time, we know exactly where we are. And it's at this point that we think, okay, there's still a road to go. There's still lots of opportunity. Thank you. Challenges to conquer. How do I bring the team with me as a leader? How do I bring those individuals to my journey, to my start point? Now let's imagine for just 1 minute. Let's switch this around. So we have come a long way. We've come a long way through many winding roads as a leader. And we've turned around, and actually it's a slope that goes down. And what we find as leaders and what we find as managers or even just individuals in life is we're often joined by companions. Okay, and if anyone caught my Lord of the Rings mention earlier, think of this, you're on your road now, you're on your companions, you can see there's 4 of you now, there's a team, you're now leading a team. But what support have they needed on this journey? How have they felt about this yomp up mountains or this long and winding road? We're now in this lush green valley. We can see again. I don't know if my UK colloquialism is going to transcend across the globe, but maybe just down there in the distance there's a pub. And if you have been to the UK on a lovely summer's day, there is nothing better than a pint of warm ale in an English pub. And as we go down this route, and maybe we've explained something, but we have different people in our team. We have different needs, different wants. And as Emma has just said there, we need to mentor them. We need to help them create their own pathway. And the way that we do that is to understand, and this is very nicely leading into neurodiversity, I promise you, is that some people will have different journeys, different pathways, different needs to the others. And when we think about what this now means to us, this picture, is it the end of the journey or is it the beginning? Because we've weathered the mountains, we've got over them, we're now in this lush green valley, but we've got different people with different needs all supporting us. We've got dreamers, we've got magicians, we've got focused individuals. We've got individuals that will work amazingly on one topic and are rubbish at others. How do we harness that skill and that opportunity? Thank you, TV. The diversity, you've already put it in there. Because we're all unique leaders, we've all got different talents, we've all got different ways of working. And it's about understanding that as neurodiverse leaders, as attracting neurodiverse employees, it might be something that's sort of not really hit your radar. It's not something that's hit a lot of organizations' radar. Okay, you will have neurodiverse employees in your workspace. That's an absolute given, and that's not just me that's saying that. That's a diagnosis perspective. We are looking certainly from a global perspective of nearly 1 in 5 people are diagnosed as neurodiverse. But we'll come on to what that actually means in a moment. So when I say not many organisations have a knowledge of this, there was a UK-based, it's called the CIPD, which is the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. And 72% of their members, over 5,000 members, said neurodiversity wasn't included in their people management practices. That's 72%. 17% said that they weren't sure if it was included. So if you add those two numbers up, it's 89%. Nearly 9 out of 10 organisations in the UK are not necessarily thinking about people think, how their neurological pathways are designed in the first place. And this untapped talent market exists mainly due to this lack of awareness. How do we support those that we don't know at the moment need our support? Gartner has even stated that that is one of the core things that an organization should look at, not only attracting neurodiverse talent, but also managing the neurodiverse talent that is existing in the workplace already. So this is the big reveal. This is why it's really important for you to understand what neurodiversity means. And when we start to embrace the thought process behind neurodiverse thinking, we can start to think differently ourselves. So what does neurodiversity mean? Neurodiversity means everybody. Think of this as an umbrella, a biodiversity. We know what biodiversity is, eco-diversity, where every living thing is under the same umbrella. That's what the term neurodiversity means. So please remember, neurodiversity means everyone. It refers to the natural variation in how our brains work. It's how we think differently. It's how we learn, and it's how we process information differently. Now, I'm sure you're saying, well, we all think differently. Of course we do. We are all unique. We've had unique experiences that have taken us to this particular point. However, there are some of us, that 1 in 5, that 20% diagnosed, and who knows how many undiagnosed, that actually fit into a slightly different thought process, a slightly different neurological makeup, neuro pathways that are firing in a completely different way to those that would be considered, we're going to use some terms here, neuronormal and neurotypical. Tell me what normal means, tell me what typical means, please, because we can't actually define either of those in society. One person's normal is another person's atypical. But when we think about everybody as under neurodiversity, what we're thinking about is every species, every human on the planet. That's what neurodiversity means. When we start to think about neurodiverse differences or those neurodiverse diagnoses that I talk about, what we're starting to look at there is neurodiverse diagnosis, okay? And you'll notice I'm saying neurodiverse difference. There are actual, we do refer to them as neurodiverse disorders occasionally, but we're trying to change the language, one person at a time. If that's you that starts to use neurodifference instead of neurodisorder, we'll have achieved something today. So what does neurodiversity actually mean? Well, in a nutshell, it means these diagnosable states. Autism, ASD, you may have heard around autism, ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, dysgraphia, and Tourette syndrome. These are across the globe. These are not just UK specific, US specific. Every human individual across the globe can have or be impacted by one of these neurodiverse differences. What we can also have, which is why you're not hearing me use the word spectrum very often today, we can also have a lot of traits that are associated with these neurodiverse differences. And having a trait of something feeling like you think in a particular way doesn't necessarily mean you have a neurodifference or a neurodisorder. Okay, it doesn't mean that you've got to go to a doctor because you think in a certain way. When you go to a doctor for a diagnosis, it's because the impact of your neural pathways, your neurological thinking is impacting you in a detrimental way. It might be affecting your relationships, your work, your home life. It might be impacting you financially. These are things that we go and seek support and help for. But that's why we deliberately, because we could have called this neurodiverse support in the workplace, but we didn't. We wanted, when we set out to educate and inform and support, we wanted to call it neurodiversity in the workplace. Because actually, by putting support in place, we tend to help everybody. Okay, and the way that we describe this, and I will go into a little bit more detail around how this affects us from from a leader's perspective in a moment. But when we think about how we can, how we support someone. The one thing that we think about is if any of you have ever been in an office block, and I'm not sure this is going to resonate too well with our Nigerian colleagues on the call here, but if it snows and it snows heavily in an office block, and out the front there's a set of stairs and there's a slope. What we tend to do is clear the snow off the steps first. We put all the salt down off the steps, and what that does is that allows all able-bodied people, people not in a wheelchair, people not on crutches, to struggle. They cannot get up those steps. And so what we suggest is that if you clear the slope, everybody can get up. And that's why we wanted to do neurodiversity in the workplace, is to support everybody. And why do we need to talk about this now? Well, unfortunately, the next slide, and I do apologize to any of our female or anyone who identifies as female, this is not the most diverse set of leaders you're ever going to see, okay? But let's try and label these individuals. So in the chat, let's go. How many of these 5 individuals can you name? Let's go in the chat. As soon as the 5 has appeared, I will stop. I will move on. How many of these? Oh, you don't have to say 4. Put their names down. Come on, let's get their. There's 4. Oh, there we go. Donna, you've got 5. Right. Let's put some names down. We've got Richard Branson, bottom right. Stephen Bartlett, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Bill Gates. There we go. Wonderful. That was very fast typing. As again, I do apologize for the diversity in this picture, but it's actually a testament to how neurodiverse differences, how individuals in leadership who are neurodiverse demonstrates just how difficult it is, or how incredible women are at masking, and also potentially how many women are not perceived as successful in business as these, I guess, icons of industry. Now, Mr. X, I love that, thank you. Now, whatever your feelings and thoughts about these individuals, the one thing that ties them in is their neurodiverse difference. They're thinking differently, whether that's ADHD, whether that's ASD, autistic spectrum disorder, whether that's dyslexia. Steve Jobs, the guy in the middle, top middle with his glasses on, and Bill Gates were never formally diagnosed. Bill Gates, despite being, I guess, self-diagnosed, never actually went and got a diagnosis. Steve Jobs, although many individuals believe was on the autistic, had ASD. Again, Steve died before his intent to find out if that was actually the case. However, what we do know is that a lot of these individuals are changing the very way that we think. They are the entrepreneurs, they are the dreamers, they are the envelope pushers. These are the individuals that are changing the face of society. Now, we do know that there are a lot of females that are changing the face of society as well. And if I was to throw out these following names: Emma Watson, Hermione, Jennifer Aniston from Friends, Billie Eilish, the incredible singer, Cher, another incredible singer, Daryl Hannah, the actress, Cara Delevingne, Florence Welch from Florence and the Machine, Keira Knightley, all incredible actors, singers, performers, and running their own businesses as well. All of those individuals are neurodiverse. All of those are either ASD, dyslexia, dyspraxia in the case of Cara Delevingne. Cara Delevingne, dyspraxia, no spatial awareness, and yet is able to walk down those catwalks, masking at its absolute brilliance there, control of that executive functioning. So although we can see there is leaders thinking differently, it's as important for us, whether we are neurodiverse leaders or not, to think about, well, what are our team doing? How impactful is that day-to-day thinking, that day-to-day masking? And when we talk about masking, what we're saying here is that an individual may be struggling just to get to work, let alone with the impact of work, let alone with the impact of social interaction, and on and on and on. And they still do the job day in, day out. But it's that point where it stops. It doesn't is easy, or doesn't appear to be as easy as possible. And that's when we think as leaders, and why we should be starting to help our teams, not only to build up this mental resilience, which will actually help support their overwhelm, whether neurodiverse or otherwise, but when we start to not be inclusive, when we start to not think about the ways that other people are thinking, what starts to happen? Well, right at the top there, decreased team productivity. I don't feel safe coming into the workplace. I don't feel me. And we see this all the time, don't we, about bringing our whole self into the workplace, about not only from our sex, from our gender, from our sexuality, as well as our home life. And we sometimes struggle. But now we need to put in this neurodiverse thinking. And we had a wonderful webinar a few months ago, which was called the Double Rainbow. And it was one of our wonderful instructors who is who's gay and also neurodiverse, and actually how it's a struggle sometimes for gay individuals that have to come out once, and then actually that acknowledgement that they're neurodiverse as well and come out again. So we're really starting to see what might happen if our true selves are not allowed in the workplace. So if communication is an issue, and we have those communication breakdowns, employees will struggle to work together effectively. That's going to reduce that productivity. Productivity is actually increased when employees are positive. They're feeling great. They come into the workplace, and productivity increases 33% by an engaged workforce. What else do disgruntled employees do? Without a supportive environment, neurodiverse individuals literally leave the company. This can be very costly in terms of turnover, and this leaves other employees feeling a bad taste in their mouth, maybe picking up all that extra work just from that communication breakdowns, conflicts, misunderstandings, miscommunications. Do you truly understand what your employee's behavior is telling you? Does your manager understand your behavior if you're not telling him or her why you're doing a particular thing? And this also leads to that avoidable HR complaints, because just because we don't understand why someone's doing something doesn't mean that we should just ignore it. So it's really important to remember that neurodiverse different thinkers sometimes behave in a certain way. Maybe they're blunt, maybe they're expressive, maybe they share too much, and you think, actually, oh, I don't want that in my team. Well, actually, that element or that trait is probably what makes them an incredible employee in the first place. We just don't understand that communication. And then we think about compliance and legal, and certainly in the UK, a neuro difference, dyslexia, dyscalculia, ADHD, autism, whether disclosed or otherwise, is covered under the Equality Act 2010 in the UK. And what that means is that if an individual is unfairly dismissed, they can take that organisation to court. A tribunal for neurodiverse differences can cost upwards of £10,000 and around 48 weeks of time. Think about members of your team taken up for 48 weeks because of a disciplinary, because of a grievance, just because someone thinks in a different way. If they are found to be culpable, if they're found guilty, fines of up to £100,000 in the UK have been given to organisations. And what does that lead to? Potential damage to the reputation. This is why we need to be thinking inclusive. This is why when we don't have that awareness of diversity, awareness of how people think and feel, we can start to impact our own bottom line. I don't want to work for company X because they do this. We saw a mass exodus from X, didn't we, and Facebook, Meta, who are very strong or very aware of attracting neurodiverse talent because they were let down. They weren't given proper guidelines, and so they actually started to see that exodus of staff, which damaged their reputation. And what that means for neurodivergent individuals, I've introduced a new word there, haven't I? I've been talking neurodiverse and neurodivergent. Neurodivergent is a term that some individuals like to give themselves. It's entirely up to you whether you think of yourself as neurodiverse or neurodivergent. The reason that some people don't like neurodivergent is that actually divergent means a completely different path, whereas diverse means, again, just a different way of thinking, but a collective. So we tend to talk about a group of neurodiverse individuals, maybe having ADHD, a group, whereas a neurodivergent is typically angled at an individual person. And what might that neurodivergent employee or that neurodivergent individual in your family or in your society, what might they be thinking? Well, neurodivergent individuals process information differently. And that might mean that challenges arise in understanding and following the instructions to the way that someone would want those instructions followed. It's also around sensory sensitivities. And what do we mean by that? So for a lot of people, bright lights, loud noises, over-sensory stimuli, smells, taste can actually have a huge impact, which means they're affecting their focus, affecting that productivity. Imagine for 1 second in the room that you're in now, if you could hear the lights, if you could smell someone else's coffee, if you could feel the itchiness of your clothes, if you could taste the toothpaste, if you could, all of these things, sight, smell, senses, all switched on at once and all overpowering. How would you even write that email? When we think about poor mental health, and this is why we talked about mental resilience, poor mental health normally comes around because of an overwhelming sense of stress, an overwhelming sense of anxiety. Now, a neurodivergent individual could already be under a lot of stress and anxiety just by getting into the workplace. And here we are adding to that stress, adding to that anxiety. We're suddenly why is that person going into meltdown? Why is that person needing 6, 10, 12 weeks off work? When actually what we could have done is put some support in earlier. Or maybe we can understand why they might need that support as well. And then you have that feeling, or especially with someone with ADHD, if they're not included or they feel like they've upset someone, those negative attitudes or those misconceptions from others can actually lead to feelings of isolation. And isolation and alienation amongst your peers, whether that's in society or in the workplace, can lead to a huge impact on your mental health. Isolation, not feeling part of something, can be as bad on your heart as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That feeling of longing, that feeling of loss. So suddenly you're an individual who is already feeling a level of overwhelm, and due to their thinking, their thought process, they're now being excluded as well. But we don't want to invite Susan out because she's a bit weird. Susan's not weird. Susan's just experiencing suffering or crippling anxiety based on her masking, based on the fact she has dyslexia, and someone's just given her a huge report to read. So we can start to see just having small changes, reasonable adjustments can really start to impact people. And then we think about that limited opportunities for growth and professional development. What's going to happen to those individuals, especially the ones that actually go under the radar? They're really good at their job, but actually couldn't put them in front of a customer. Why does that mean that they're excluded from those promotions? Why does that mean with a little accommodation, with a little bit of help and support, that individual couldn't be an incredible manager? But a lot of neurodiverse individuals do miss out on that. If we think about in the workplace as a general rule, autistic spectrum disorder, ASD, less than 28% with diagnosed ASD are in full-time work. It's less than 28%, incredible number. And yet, Google, SAP, Microsoft, Virgin, all try and attract as many neurodiverse, different thinkers as possible. We are the dreamers. We are the articulators, the great orators, the stand up and give a presentation in 30 seconds, or we planned it meticulously so nothing goes wrong. Why wouldn't you want a neurodiverse thinker on your team? And as managers, because we often think the manager, the leader is the baddie because they're the ones not necessarily putting the provisions in place, not putting the adjustments in place. But think about your managers. If you're in an organization, what training have they had? What knowledge base are they working from? What challenges are they having on a day-to-day basis, neurodiverse or otherwise? Because even a neurodiverse manager will have the same impact as a neurodiverse employee, but they're doing it probably from above, getting from the leadership team, and obviously, communicating downwards. So how do we support those neurodiverse managers? Well, for most part, it's about, I'm not sure what to do. I don't know how to provide these accommodations. What's a reasonable adjustment? Terry has just come and said he wants a Porsche. Is that a reasonable adjustment? Of course it's not. Just because someone has got autistic spectrum disorder does not necessarily mean they need a Porsche. It'd be nice if you can do that. But it's about understanding what is a reasonable adjustment. And also when you think about, well, how do I actually know that stress situation, that overwhelm, that undue level of anxiety is starting to bubble up? How do I notice that? And think about it again, untrained managers, something like 60% of UK managers at least have no formal training in empathy, mental health training, neurodiversity training, diversity training. 60% of the UK still doesn't put their managers through true empathy training. So maybe they're not able to identify, maybe they're not able to see their team because they're under stress. They're working as hard as they can as well. And when you've got this lack of knowledge, especially around neurodiverse differences, especially about someone who's just revealed to you that they've got ADHD, caught it from a toilet seat or something, that lack of knowledge really hinders a manager. It really doesn't enable them to be as supportive of that team culture because there'll always be someone on the outside, on that periphery. However, understanding that individual with that neurodifference can be incredible, has huge strengths to bring to the organization, you might start to think differently about how you can support that individual as well. And then as a manager, we're already overwhelmed, we're already working sort of 12, 13 hours a day, but actually we start to feel overwhelmed by these additional responsibilities. I've now got to take this, I've now got to accommodate this, I've now got to support this, and I don't know what to do. Supporting your managers is the number one key thing. We've been really lucky enough to roll this out across the whole of Coca-Cola in Europe. And the first thing that Coca-Cola has done is roll this out to their managers. Because where managers are trained and understand, their managers can do different things. Their managers can support those individuals that at the moment are going unsupported. And as we said before, what is the impact on an individual? What are the impacts on their mental health of having to take on all this new responsibility, having to manage this diverse team, this global team in many cases? This will make a fall in their performance, who are supporting the managers. Some managers do not have any training, do not feel they need it, and therefore teams struggle under. Exactly. So we've also got the opposite there. Thank you for that, Andy. We've got the opposite there, whereby Actually, I don't need the training because I know it all. No manager knows, no individual knows it. That's why CPD is so important. Continual personal development, learn, understand, embrace, nurture new thoughts is the only way that we as managers, as team leaders, as humans can move forward in life, to understand that sometimes we need to do things a little bit differently. And it's only when we acknowledge or accept that thinking differently is an asset that, yes, we may have to put up with some challenges, but that the strengths totally outweigh. There's a wonderful saying I love: if you keep doing what you've always done, you will continue to get the same results. If the end result is someone leaving, if the end result is a personal improvement plan, if the end result is a disenfranchised workforce, a non-inclusive workforce, then you've done something wrong. An organization should always be striving to get up that next mountain, to get into that next lush valley. And we do that with our teams and our team members. We have loads of fantastic information at the beginning when people talk about mentoring. And I always felt as a leader, and I've been a leader in many different occasions, is that I don't lead from the front. I help push from the back. I encourage. I give everyone the opportunity to be the best of their potential. And I think that's what we're really trying to say today is, if you believe that there is a potential in your team and you maybe not untapped it, there's another wonderful saying called discretionary effort. Discretionary effort is a gift that can never be given, but it's what is inside all of us to go that extra mile, to be someone that does things differently. It's a long way to build inclusion. It's a long way to turn around that ship of culture that you might be on. What we're trying to say is, at least we're on the bridge now. We can start influencing the captain, maybe. We can start to turn the oil tanker just in a slightly different direction. The more inclusive we are, the more impactful we will be. And as leaders, we need to ensure that we're bringing the entire team through with us as well. If you start thinking differently, neurodiverse or otherwise, you'll adapt your leadership style, you'll be doing different things, and you'll be bringing your team on their mental resilience journey and on their level of support as well. And there was just done a wonderful sort of comment there. Managerial role seems to be a role that is learned on the job. We train and teach others to do that, but the managerial role is a job that's largely unsupported. Absolutely. Emotional quotient to change my ADHD lead. Thank you, Richard. That's amazing. It'd be lovely to connect on LinkedIn if you would like to. Yes, that's there are game changers out there. There are leaders that are doing things differently as well. If you focus on your strengths, if you are neurodiverse and anything has impacted you today, that you think, actually, wow, this is what I need to do. I need to be more open. We need to talk about this. We have individuals coming on our courses, the first time they've ever told anyone they're dyslexic, and they're 55. We need to be tackling this in the workplace every day. We need to be more open and sharing our stories, our lived experiences. That's the end of the formal session. We do have a little bit of time for questions. If you would like to put them in the chat or you have any observations, that would be incredible. But thank you very much for being part of this last sort of 55 minutes or so.
Simon, thank you so
No problem,
much,
sorry.
first of all, for, I think, it's a really interesting and inspiring perspective on this topic. I think, it's testament to the fact that you provide incredible CPD training on this area. So we would just like to thank you so much for this particular webinar. I think it's brought up some really salient points about neurodiversity and what that means today and how we should be approaching it. So as you mentioned, we have got some time for questions and comments. So I'm just looking through these now. So Andy asks or makes the note that some managers in higher education do not have any training or feedback, and therefore they see their teams struggle. So it does seem to happen. Do you have any further comments on that, and how HE sits around there, and what their sort of perspective on that is at the moment?
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you've gone straight into higher education because there's this sort of underlying school of thought that not only does academia attract neurodiverse thinkers in that particular thing because there's a focus level, there's a super enjoyment of teaching others and that. But again, what you do have is that a lot of neurodiverse thinkers in role potentially don't feel they need to have that training. It's only
Yeah.
when I guess that awareness element comes on board for everybody that they suddenly, oh, okay, now I can accept and maybe I can talk openly about. I mean, I three head teachers that I know really well, really personally, not quite in higher education, but certainly been through that thing, are all dyslexic. You wouldn't have
Mm.
thought, and yet none of them have openly, spoke about their dyslexia throughout their head teacher in, terms. And I think that's really telling that in my very small circle of head teachers that I know, that at least three of them are dyslexic. So yeah, I think the more we talk about it, the more we're able to make it safe for other people to talk about it.
Yeah, and I sort of really agree with that. My background was originally in psychology, and I think, that sort of use of the terminology of safe conversations, I think is really key here. Just making sure everybody has that space to, say who they are and what they do, and as you say, make it safe for everybody, not to find it intimidating or as a challenge. Okay, so Emma says the managerial role seems to be a role that's learnt on the job. We're training and teaching others, but it's a role that is largely unsupported. Currently a project of mine to change in our location. Would you agree with that? That it's sort of learn on the job, and we don't get enough training around the topics that we've talked about today?
Very much so. Let's think of what makes a great manager. Oh, you've been here 4 years. Everyone else has
Mm,
left. You now got to manage this team. So quite often people are thrust into management positions because of their longevity or because of their maturity potentially. But as we know, budgets are tight, and
yeah.
she seems to be doing okay. Why should we give them training? And it's only
Mm,
when you go and ask, and again, let's go back to education, there's virtually no budget.
yeah.
We tried to do some mental health training into a school, and their budget per person was £10 a year.
Really?
And
Wow.
yeah, you
That
just,
is,
and that was their well-being budget. One particular school, part of a trust, and you just think, right, okay, well, that's very telling for
mm,
organizations if you
mm,
don't invest in your people. So yeah,
mm,
I think what we need to be doing is at that point that individual is made a manager, turned into a manager,
mm,
that we actually, that we support those managers straight away. What
yeah,
do you need to know about? And not go and do a little tick box, watch a video for 15
yeah.
minutes and you're an expert on diversity, equality, and inclusion, but actually get real, real training under your belt.
Mm, yeah. I mean, £10 a head, that's just frightening, isn't it? But I suppose all due to funding and employer choices. So Richard's asking, do you teach neurodivergent people to access their superpower? I love that word, superpower, associated with their diagnosis. Is that something that you particularly hone in on, Simon?
Well, it's odd actually because and our neurodiversity director Shezi, who helped to create the program, hates the term superpower. We
Okay.
see all this thing dyslexic thinking and stuff. What we've got as neurodiverse thinkers is we've got an ability to do things differently.
Mm,
And some of us will have, we'll be able to multitask. Some of us will be able to super focus in. If you think about computer programmers and like spotting one line of code, I can spot a missing comma at 100 miles. It's one of my sort of super. But then I also have that sort of procrastination. You know, as you were asking me for the slides for this presentation, I got them to you over the weekend before the and all these sort of things. So whereas we sort of superpowers is an interesting concept because what we're talking about is an individual's ability to do something incredible. Now,
Hmm.
whether or not you term it a superpower, but to answer Richard's question, our training, both from an instructor perspective, so we teach individuals to be neurodiversity instructors, as well as deliver that end training.
Yeah.
Yes, what we do is we offer that to everybody. So
Yeah.
we have training for managers, we have training for champions, and we have that general awareness training that
Okay.
allows people to acknowledge that all of these individuals have super strengths. That's what I'm going to go for, rather than
Okay.
superpowers,
So it's like
super strengths.
companions and super strengths, you would say, the best way to approach that in terms
Yeah.
of language and vernacular.
So, yeah, but again, each to their own. If someone
Mm.
believes they have a superpower, of course they are. And if that helps them to focus and get the job done and be incredible, because they already are incredible, just by being here and being born, you're incredible. But
Yeah.
having that, yeah, how you use the language on yourself is absolutely fine. But we don't use the word superpower in our training. We just talk about super strengths.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Richard does note that ADHD superpowers can be hyper focused, creative, and impulsive. As impulsive, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah,
So we have
I'm with you on
another.
that one, Richard.
How would you recommend that a leader should balance the support for a neurodivergent employee with the needs of the company or the manager? So what would be your recommendations there, Simon?
So the first step on any of this journey is awareness. So it's an acknowledgement that the company is taking this seriously. We've just had Neurodiversity Celebration Week, woo, which isn't me putting Neurodiversity Celebration Week down. But when we focus and hone everything onto a week, it's like, well, actually, when it's now not Neurodiversity Celebration Week this week. So, but no, we should be talking about celebrating neurodiversity, celebrating diversity in all its forms every single day of every single year. So please don't take that as a particular slur on what is a fantastic awareness.
Yeah.
But how do we move from that awareness? How do we educate the managers more? Yes, we deliver some world-class CPD certified training. However, we do know that lots of charities do that. There are lots of other individuals out there. I
Uh-huh.
want everybody to be educated in whatever form that is. If it's through us, brilliant. If it's not, and it is on an e-learning platform, what I think we need to do, it's an amazing name. I'm not Chuck Wabuka. Hopefully I'm close. I think what you need to do is you need to start educating everyone, and it starts from the
Yeah.
top, but it
Yeah.
has to include the middle, and it has to include all the employees.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think we've got any further questions. Obviously,
I do.
lots
Someone
lots of
has
feedback.
sent me a sorry, Amanda. Someone has sent me a
No, go
direct
for it.
question.
Go for it. You've still
Um,
got a couple of
and it's
minutes.
yeah, do we have any advice for getting employees to complete work without overwhelming them? So there's some of their individuals don't complete some of the admin. So
Okay.
no, and they apologize for being specific, but this is brilliant. What's the communication? How has the communication gone out to these trainers? How has the communication gone out to the rest of the organization? This is important, clearly, to you as an organization to have this completed. Why are they not completing it?
Hmm.
What's going on? Is there a level of overwhelm? We have something which is a communication worksheet that we send out to all of our employees, and it allows them, well, what's the best way to get hold of me? Because if you're just
Mm.
sending out loads of emails and someone's dyslexic, they're not going to read the emails.
Yeah.
If someone with ADHD will be doing it at 5 to midnight on the day it needs to be done. So how can I help them do time management? How can I help them to do task management? So it might be I just need some training on focus. And
Right.
actually, if that training is something, but how do they learn? Well, I need to listen to something. I need to watch something. I need to have hands-on kinesthetic learning.
Hmm.
I don't know what my trainers are doing if I don't ask them. So what we do is we think about, well, in this particular case, maybe you can do a survey. maybe you can get all your trainers in and have a one-to-one about communication and what's the best way for you to communicate with them. Hopefully that's okay and answered that, Catherine.
Okay, all right. Well, it just leaves it to me, I suppose, to say thank you so much for, what's been an incredible session, really useful and so helpful in in today's workplace and how we're looking at all of these issues. So thank you so much, and thank you for everybody for attending. This is, as we say, it's not just information that we take on board and think about, but it's also CPD for us as trainers, as coaches, as online educators. So for everybody that's tuned in, there will be a recording of this session on YouTube shortly. Simon will be sharing the slides. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can share the slides. Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem at all.
So we'll do that in our roundup. And once again, thank you, everybody. And just leaves me to say happy Monday and all have a great week.